In the Istanbul Archaeological Museum, in the Hall of Mesopotamian Antiquities, among thousands of clay tablets from Nippur that the University of Pennsylvania expedition shipped out in crates between 1889 and 1900, there is a fragment catalogued as NI 2461. The tablet was described in a single line: ritual text, fragmentary, non-standard vocabulary, and placed in storage for 127 years. In 2019, Turkish Assyriologist Mehmet Celik of the University of Ankara requested access to a group of Nippur fragments for his dissertation on archaic ritual terminology. He received 32 fragments. NI 2461 was the 27th. Celik spent 4 months on it, 3 times longer than on the other 31 combined. The tablet was not a ritual text. It was a report. The text described an event that occurred on one specific night. On that night, according to the tablet, 40,000 people, scattered across different territories, unconnected to each other, speaking no common language, simultaneously saw the same dream. The dream was not symbolic, it was technical. Each of the 40,000 saw the same structure, its shape, its proportions, its cardinal orientation, and the exact location where it was to be built. The tablet states that the next morning they began walking, all of them, toward one point, without knowing about each other, without knowing that the others had seen the same thing. They arrived, met, and began to build. Celik sent his transliteration to 2 colleagues. Both responded identically. The description of the structure on the tablet, shape, proportions, orientation, matches a real object that archaeology has already discovered, excavated, and spent 20 years failing to explain. The tablet does not explain who sent the dream. It explains only what was in it. And here is what is unsettling. The structure these people built still stands, and the question of how 40,000 people received the same instruction on the same night has never been asked by any archaeologist, because no archaeologist has read NI 2461. The dream section of NI 2461 occupies 14 lines, the longest continuous passage on the tablet. Celik's transliteration reveals a level of architectural specificity that has no parallel in any known Sumerian dream text. Standard Sumerian dream literature, and there is a substantial corpus, including the Dream of Gudea, the Dream of Dumuzi, and several dream omens from the Isin Larsa period, uses symbolic language. The dreamer sees water, and the interpreter says it means prosperity. The dreamer sees a mountain, and the interpreter says it means a powerful enemy. NI 2461 contains no symbolism, no interpretation, no omen. The text describes what 40,000 people saw, and what they saw was a blueprint. The dream showed circular enclosures, not square, not rectangular, circular, arranged in concentric rings. Inside each enclosure, tall, upright stones, described with the term Narua Galma, which translates as great exalted standing stones. The stones were T-shaped. The text is specific. The term used combines the sign for stone with a modifier that indicates a horizontal element crossing the top of a vertical element, a capital T. The stones were arranged in pairs facing each other across the center of each enclosure, with smaller stones forming the perimeter. The dream showed the location, a high place in the land between 2 rivers, on a hill where no city stands, where the ground is white stone, limestone. The dream showed the orientation. The entrance of the primary enclosure faced the point where the sun rises on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. The dream showed one more thing. The text says the dream was accompanied by a sound, a continuous low tone that the dreamers could feel in their chests, described with the term Gude Anna, voice of heaven. The sound did not stop when they woke. It persisted. It pulled them toward the location. 40,000 people woke from the same dream, heard the same sound, and followed it to the same hill. What the text describes, circular enclosures, T-shaped megaliths in paired arrangements, limestone hilltop between 2 rivers, solstice alignment, was excavated starting in 1995 by Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute. He called it Göbekli Tepe. Göbekli Tepe is dated to approximately 9,600 BCE, making it the oldest known monumental structure on Earth. It predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. It predates the Great Pyramid by 7,000 years. It predates the invention of pottery, agriculture, writing, metallurgy, and the wheel. The people who built it were pre-Neolithic hunter-gatherers, living in small, mobile bands of 20 to 40 individuals. They had no permanent settlements, no centralized authority, no written language, no domesticated animals or cultivated crops. And they built a complex of circular enclosures containing over 200 T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing 20 tons, carved with relief sculptures, arranged with precision, implying advanced planning and coordinated labor over decades. Klaus Schmidt spent 19 years excavating Göbekli Tepe. He identified the central paradox in his first season. The paradox is logistical. To quarry, transport, carve, and erect pillars of this size and number requires a labor force of at least 500 people working continuously. To feed 500 people in a pre-agricultural economy requires a catchment area of hundreds of square kilometers and a supply chain that hunter-gatherer social organization cannot support. Someone had to coordinate the labor. Someone had to organize the food supply. Someone had to design the layout before construction began, because the enclosures are not random. They follow a consistent architectural plan with repeated proportional relationships between pillar size, enclosure diameter, and spacing. Schmidt proposed that Göbekli Tepe was a ceremonial site attracting pilgrims, that religious motivation drove hunter-gatherers to cooperate at unprecedented scale. This became the consensus, but it does not answer the core question. How did hundreds of independent bands, spread across thousands of square kilometers, with no communication technology, no shared language, and no centralized leadership, simultaneously converge on a single hilltop and build the same structure? Schmidt called it the world's first cathedral. He said religion came first, civilization followed. What he did not have was NI 2461, a text providing an answer he never considered. They did not decide. They were told. All of them. On the same night. In a dream. The most unusual element of NI 2461 is not the shared dream. It is what happened after the dreamers woke up. The text describes a sound, Gude Anna, voice of heaven, that began during the dream and continued into waking consciousness. The sound was not audible in the normal sense. The text says it was felt in the shu-si, the chest and the belly, not heard with the ears. A vibration, a frequency experienced physically rather than acoustically. The text says this sound had a directional quality. It pulled. The Sumerian verb used is gur, which means to turn toward or to be drawn, combined with ki, meaning place. The sound turned people toward a place. It functioned as navigation. 40,000 people woke from the same dream, felt the same vibration in their bodies, and walked in the direction it pulled them. Some for days, some for weeks. The text does not describe confusion or resistance. It describes compliance, not forced, but felt. The sound made the direction obvious. It made arriving feel inevitable. This detail, a physically felt vibration with directional properties experienced by dispersed populations, is not unique to NI 2461. Aboriginal Australian songlines describe vibrational paths felt through the body. The Vedic nada describes a primordial sound guiding consciousness to specific points. The Hopi creation narrative describes the first people guided by a vibration felt in the tops of their heads. 4 traditions, 4 continents, same phenomenon. A sound not heard but felt, with directional properties, guiding populations to specific locations. Modern physics has a framework. ELF waves, extremely low-frequency electromagnetic waves below 300 Hz, propagate through the Earth's crust and can be perceived by biological organisms as sensation rather than sound. The Schumann resonance, 7 to 8 Hz, corresponds to the Earth ionosphere cavity's fundamental frequency and has been documented to affect human brain states during sleep. A Schumann range signal, modulated with geographic information, broadcast through the electromagnetic field, would be felt, not heard, would have directional properties, and would affect sleeping brains preferentially. The technology to generate such a signal does not exist today. The Sumerians said someone used it 12,000 years ago. Göbekli Tepe was not abandoned. It was buried, deliberately. Around 8000 BCE, approximately 1,600 years after construction began, the entire complex was systematically backfilled with rubble, soil, and refuse. The backfill was not natural sedimentation. Geological analysis has confirmed that the fill material was brought from elsewhere and deposited intentionally, enclosure by enclosure, over an extended period. Someone buried Göbekli Tepe on purpose. This is not disputed. What is disputed is why. Schmidt proposed that the site lost its religious significance as agriculture emerged and communities became sedentary, and that the burial was a ritual closing ceremony. Others have suggested that the site was buried to preserve it, to protect it from enemies, or from natural degradation. Ni 2461 provides a different explanation. The final section, the most damaged portion, contains 7 partially legible lines describing what happened after completion. The text says the structure worked. The Sumerian phrase is Milam Gara, which translates as the radiance was established. Milam being the term for divine luminosity, the visible aura of functioning divine power. The structure, once completed, produced something. The text does not describe what it produced in terms that can be easily translated, because the vocabulary shifts to terms found nowhere else in the corpus. But the context implies a function. The structure was built for a purpose, the purpose was achieved, and then a decision was made. The decision was to shut it down. The text uses the term basub, meaning it was dropped, or it was silenced, the same verb used in astronomical texts for a celestial body disappearing below the horizon. Whatever the structure was doing, it stopped. And the text says it was then covered, using the same terminology found in texts describing the ritual burial of sacred objects that have completed their function and must not be disturbed. The structure was activated, operated, completed its task, was deactivated, and then buried, not abandoned, decommissioned. The backfill was not a funeral, it was a shutdown procedure. In 2020, acoustic engineers from University College London conducted a study of the acoustic properties of Göbekli Tepe's enclosure D, the best preserved of the circular structures. Their findings, presented at a conference on archaeoacoustics, documented something unexpected. The enclosure functions as a resonance chamber. The T-shaped pillars, arranged in their specific configuration, create standing wave patterns at particular frequencies when sound is introduced into the space. The resonant frequency of enclosure D falls in the range of 90 to 110 Hz, a frequency range that corresponds to the human chest cavity resonance, and that multiple studies have shown to produce altered states of consciousness, including trance, dissociation, and vivid visual imagery. The enclosure was not a temple in the way that word is commonly understood, a place where people gather to pray or to watch a priest perform rituals. It was a machine for producing specific acoustic effects on the human body and brain. The T-shaped pillars are not decorative, they are acoustic reflectors. Their shape, size, spacing, and arrangement are the parameters of a resonance system. Change any parameter and the resonant frequency shifts. The builders did not choose the T-shape arbitrarily. They chose it because it produces the specific frequency response the structure was designed to generate. Ni 2461 describes the dream as accompanied by Gude Anna, voice of heaven, a frequency felt in the chest. The enclosure at Göbekli Tepe is engineered to produce a frequency felt in the chest. The structure that 40,000 people saw in a dream, built according to exact specifications they received while sleeping, turns out to be an acoustic device tuned to the same type of frequency that the tablet says summoned them. They did not build a temple, they built a receiver. And the question no one has asked is, a receiver for what? Celik completed his transliteration of Ni 2461 in late 2019. He shared it with 2 colleagues, one at Leiden, one at the Oriental Institute in Chicago. The Leiden colleague responded with the comment about Göbekli Tepe. The Chicago colleague did not respond for 3 months, then sent a brief note suggesting that the tablet was likely a late literary composition, not a historical report, and that publishing it in connection with Göbekli Tepe would invite criticism from both Assyriologists and prehistorians. Celik submitted a preliminary paper to the Journal of Near Eastern Studies in early 2020. The paper was returned without review. The editorial note stated that the journal could not evaluate claims connecting cuneiform texts to pre-Neolithic sites without interdisciplinary peer review that the journal was not equipped to conduct. This is a reasonable institutional response. It is also a perfect structural barrier. No Assyriology journal will publish a paper about Göbekli Tepe. No archaeology journal will publish a paper about a cuneiform tablet. The text falls between disciplines, and the gap between disciplines is where inconvenient evidence goes to disappear. Celik has not submitted the paper elsewhere. His dissertation, completed in 2021, covers 31 of the 32 Nippur fragments he studied. NI 2461 is not among them. The tablet remains in Istanbul, in the same storage unit where it has been since 1897. The transliteration exists in the private files of 3 scholars. 40,000 people saw the same dream on the same night. The dream contained architectural specifications for a structure that was subsequently built at the exact location the dream indicated. The structure, when completed, functioned as an acoustic resonance device tuned to frequencies that affect human consciousness. The structure was operated, completed its purpose, deactivated, and deliberately buried. 12,000 years later, a German archaeologist excavated it, identified it as the oldest monumental construction in human history, and spent 2 decades trying to explain how pre-Neolithic hunter-gatherers built it. He could not. The logistical problem, how hundreds of independent bands coordinated without communication, leadership, or agriculture, remains unsolved in the archaeological literature. NI 2461 solves it. They were coordinated by a shared dream and guided to the location by a frequency felt in the body. The structure they built was designed to produce the same type of frequency. A signal was sent. A receiver was built. The receiver was used. Then it was buried. The academic consensus treats Göbekli Tepe as evidence that religion preceded civilization. NI 2461 suggests something simpler and more disturbing. It was not belief. It was instruction. 40,000 people did not choose to build. They were shown what to build, where, and how. The design was not theirs. The purpose was not explained. They were labor, skilled, coordinated, essential, summoned by a dream and guided by a frequency to construct a device whose function they never understood. The tablet does not say who sent the dream. It does not say what the structure received. It does not say why it was buried when its task was complete. It says only that it happened, in the procedural language of a culture that documented grain shipments and canal construction with the same clinical precision. NI 2461 is in Istanbul. Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey. The acoustic data is in a 2020 conference paper. The archaeological paradox is in every prehistory textbook, and the connection exists in the private files of a Turkish Assyriologist told his evidence falls between disciplines. The dream was sent. The structure was built. The frequency still resonates in the pillars. And the question remains, who needed a receiver on that hill? And what were they listening for?